for this team. When is it not? 140 to 131 is the final. We welcome you in. It's Dubs OT with JD, John Dickinson, here on the Sports Leader. 808 KNBR is the number. 808 KNBR as the Warriors beginning the 4-game road trip. And they improve now to 18-20 on the season as the Warriors right back in action tomorrow at Milwaukee before stops in Memphis and Salt Lake City before Golden State has their next home game, which is going to come up a week from tonight. But as people file into the YouTube chat, and we appreciate those watching on Twitch as well as joining us here on KNBR, the Sports Leader. And, wow, a lot to get into and dissect, and a big win for Golden State and a lot of different contributions for the Warriors as we'll just kind of lay things out here at the top. Major third quarter that flipped what was a debacle of a finish to the second quarter for the Warriors. Klay Thompson with a spectacular third quarter to bring the Warriors back into and the lead from behind and ultimately give them enough of a cushion that they could continue to pad in the fourth quarter and then play keep away. It felt like down the stretch with Stephen Curry having some big buckets in the fourth quarter to keep Chicago at bay. And the Warriors finishing lineup tonight. After all of the talk about Wiggins and Kuminga playing together, the Warriors ended up getting major contributions from both Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga in this one, with both of those players, for the most part, playing separately, but not at the end. They were out there together in the final 3 minutes with 3 shooters, and Steve Kerr making another lineup adjustment in this game, and one that I think may have been unpopular to many Warrior fans. But regardless, the Warriors do get the win over the Chicago Bulls in this one, by that final of 140 to 131. So 808 KNBR, if you want to react to this one, it's Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader. We'll get to the YouTube chat coming up, and it'll be nice to have a little bit of positivity tonight as this team tries to hit the reset button on the road and build back toward 500. We talked about it the other night. It's pretty plain and simple for the Warriors at this stage. I mean, I think they need to win 3 out of the 4 on this trip. When you look at Chicago, who'd been playing much better basketball of late, 13-7, I believe, in their last 20. But Milwaukee tomorrow, second of a back-to-back, that game's going to be incredibly difficult. So you really had to get this one. And then now with John Morant down for the season, you got to go win in Memphis on the MLK holiday and then finish things off against another team that's been playing much better basketball of late, the Utah Jazz, who have vaulted themselves all the way back into a position where coming into the night they were ahead of the Warriors in the Western Conference standings. Both teams on the outside looking in of even the play-in tournament. So just some thoughts on this one right off the top here. Steve Kerr, I give credit to Steve Kerr for doing something that I think in many Warrior fan circles was probably incredibly unpopular when it went down, and that is the starting lineup change that he made. He went back to Andrew Wiggins when Andrew Wiggins had been one of the most maligned players on the planet. Steve Kerr goes back to Andrew Wiggins in the starting lineup. He removes Jonathan Kuminga from the starting lineup. He goes back to the veteran and Kevon Looney, who had been out there on Wednesday night when the Warriors got smoked against the Pelicans inside Chase Center. But he goes to Wiggins. He puts shooting out there with Wiggins. He puts the stabilizing force of Kevon Looney on the floor at the beginning of the game with Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson. And Andrew Wiggins was the best Warrior player on the court in the early part of the game. And the Warriors did get down because the Bulls were hot and basically hitting everything in the early part of the game. But the Warriors just had a significantly more, just a significantly higher level of hustle and energy at the beginning of the game. Saric was knocking down threes. Steph and Klay were not hitting early. In fact, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson both just struggling mightily at the beginning of the game, and the Warriors were being carried offensively by Andrew Wiggins and by Dario Saric. And I don't know if this is a last stand for Andrew Wiggins with the Golden State Warriors. I think it remains to be seen what the Warriors ultimately do here with the trade deadline now inside of 4 weeks away. And there could be something coming sooner than later. But I think the thing that Steve Kerr did, and I'm going to praise him for it, with this team on the road, I think he almost treated it as if it's going to be a last stand for the veterans. And it doesn't mean the younger players are not going to play, but this thing is going to begin and end with the Warriors veterans between now and the trade deadline when this team decides whether or not they need to make a move. So with Wiggins maligned, he goes back to Andrew Wiggins. And Andrew Wiggins rewards the faith that Steve Kerr put in him by playing a really, really good ball game. And oh, by the way, that did not mean that Jonathan Kuminga was going to sulk or mope or complain. Jonathan Kuminga came off the bench, and while they rarely played together tonight, there were a couple of short stints in the first half. They did play the final 3 minutes of the game, as I had mentioned earlier, when Klay Thompson came back in after Steve Kerr. My God, get Klay Thompson back in the game down the stretch. Wait until about the 3-minute mark. Klay immediately comes in, hits a big three after the Warriors had let a lead get all the way down to 4. But just because the veterans are starting doesn't mean that the younger players can't play and can't make a positive impact on the game. And so I give Steve Kerr credit for going back to a balanced lineup with Looney, the Warriors' best big when he's right, putting the faith in Wiggins, and basically I think saying, all right, veterans, trust each other, play hard for each other. I'm going to use the young players as subs right now based on who's available to play on this roster with all of the injuries. And I'm going to cobble it together that way. But it's not an excuse if you're not happy with my decision to go out there and not play well. So hat tip to Wiggins for playing better and playing with more energy. And I think Jonathan Kuminga gets a major hat tip for not sulking, not being ticked off. And if he was ticked off, he went out there and he went about his business in the right way. And Jonathan Kuminga cooked when he got opportunities to play. So excellent Andrew Wiggins minutes in the first quarter as he goes back into the starting lineup. Saric at the 4 was knocking down threes. The Warriors were really hustling and playing like a desperate team in the early going tonight in Chicago. They didn't turn it over. Bulls hit threes, but the Warriors were still up 33-30 at the end of the first quarter. Second quarter, Kuminga came in, and Kuminga was cooking from the outside. Warriors up 4, middle of the third quarter, and they were getting big-time contributions were the Warriors from not only Andrew Wiggins, but Jonathan Kuminga, who was knocking down shots from the outside. He was getting into the paint and hitting that pull-up game. It was kind of the Jonathan Kuminga game tonight offensively that is more indicative of the Jonathan Kuminga game that I think he wants to play. There were more pull-up shots tonight. There were more unabashed three-pointers tonight. I think he was 3 for 21 coming into the game, and he hit his first 3 from deep in the ball game tonight. And Jonathan Kuminga really, really, really played well. His energy was great. Kuminga was 4 for 4 from 3 in the game tonight, and the Warriors needed it. If that 4 for 4 is an 0 for 4, we might be having a conversation about another collapse. Kuminga, really good. 24 points, and he was the third scorer. It was Stephen Curry who found his way to 27. It was Klay Thompson with the big third quarter to end up with 30. And Kuminga wound up off the bench as the Warriors outscored the Bulls bench. That was still intact. Even with the bench basically being a bunch of young players, the Warriors still dominated the bench. Even with Chris Paul not around tonight, the Warriors still dominated the bench. 45-22. In favor of Golden State. So, yeah, Kuminga was really rolling. Trace Jackson-Davis put an imprint on the game. I thought Podziemski was better than his line indicated in this one. And things just – the lineups made sense for the Warriors. The rotation made sense for the Warriors in the first quarter and a half, and it put them in a position where they were ahead. And then all of a sudden, in a blink, the Bulls just got – nuclear hot from three-point range, and the Warriors were up 50-44 midway through the second quarter. Final 6 minutes, 31-12 Chicago. It wound up being a 45-29 quarter in favor of the Bulls, and the Warriors somehow found themselves down 75-62 as Chicago scored 17 points in the final 2 minutes and 22 seconds. Brutal. And the Warriors were, I think, a step slow in picking up shooters. I think their rotations were a beat off. And all of a sudden, what looked to be the most promising half the Warriors had probably played since the Denver game when the Nuggets came back from 18 down. Chicago was the third consecutive Warriors opponent to put a deep 70. Not 75 after giving up 76 on Sunday and 73 against the Pelicans in the first half on Wednesday at Chase Center. So a lot of leaving players too open, miscommunications on the defensive end, and then the Bulls, of course, were shooting out of their minds, and this game was immediately in a danger zone going to the third quarter for the Warriors with them down by 13. Steve Kerr stuck with it, and Klay Thompson went off in the third quarter. Immediate 12-4 run led by Klay. Klay had 14 of the first 20 for the Warriors in the third quarter. It wound up being a 25-9 start for the Warriors in the third quarter, and Klay was kind of doing it all. He was shooting the basketball well from deep. He was moving the rock. Kerr went back to Jonathan Kuminga, and it was basically Kuminga and Klay in the third quarter once Kuminga came in as a sub. And here's another one where I'm going to give Steve Kerr credit, because it was a night where maybe he didn't intend to play Wiggins and Kuminga together, but Wiggins independently from Kuminga, they both had played well when they weren't on the floor together, and both kind of had a little bit of a heater going separately, with Wiggins predominantly playing the 3 and Kuminga predominantly playing the 4. Actually, not predominantly. Kuminga was the 4 for every second that he was on the floor for the Warriors in this game tonight. Wiggins was mostly, if not 100%, at the 3 for every minute that he played tonight. There was a lot of Saric out there with the two of them. More shooting. Podziemski was out there as an added playmaker for good stretches. And I just think Steve Kerr found a much better balance. Trace Jackson-Davis had a nice impact on the game as well. He has that lob threat and that ability when the defense is drawn in other directions to really slip in and get some easy buckets. The Warriors were able to take advantage of that. But I give Kerr credit for basically saying, you know what? I don't really want to play Wiggins and Kuminga together, but Wiggins has played well without Kuminga. Kuminga's played well without Wiggins. They're both playing well separately. I'm going to play them together a little bit. And so he did in short stretches, and the Warriors, as bad as the second quarter wound up being for Golden State, 48-20 Warriors in the third quarter. So they not only wiped away the bad taste from the 45-29 in the second quarter, but they wound up actually having a third quarter that was better than as bad of the second quarter as it was. And then you go to the fourth quarter, and the Warriors up by 15. Bulls had cut it down to 8, then to 6. It was a 10-0 run with 7:19 to go. Kuminga was starting to struggle a little bit at that point. He was going a little too one-on-one. He was missing. His defense was a little bit off, and it was time to get Andrew Wiggins back in the game. Steve Kerr unafraid to get Wiggins back in the game. Did that mean Kuminga was going to not finish? It might mean Kuminga was not going to finish the game. I'll be honest, I had the thought, my guy Greg Silver, I said, can you imagine? It's the right move to go to Wiggins over Kuminga right now, but can you imagine if Steve Kerr goes to Wiggins over Kuminga right now with as much as Kuminga had scored and as well as he played, and the Warriors wind up having this game get away from him the way the Denver game did? It would be a rage and a fury from Dub Nation that we have not seen, and that's saying something, because people have been spectacularly fired up to this point on everything that's going on over this losing spell that the Warriors have had. So Levine made it a 7-point game, but then Curry back in. Curry had all the answers. Wiggins hit maybe the biggest shot of the night to stem the tide mid-quarter, a buzzer-beating shot clock hit to make it 118-110. Curry hit a couple of threes, started cold, but finished hot and helped put the Bulls away. We talked about Klay Thompson not being in the game quickly enough as the Bulls continued to get on a heater down the stretch, but then Steve Kerr calls a timeout, gets Klay Thompson back in the game for Podziemski. Podziemski had not played well in that mid-fourth quarter stretch, so he ends up finishing with not only Steph and Klay and Wiggins at the 3, but he goes to Kuminga for Looney. and he finishes with Kuminga at the 4 and Dario Saric at the 5. And so those two end up closing the game. 3 shooters on that's. I know playmaking has been part of the discussion about you got to have a playmaker on the court if you're going to play Wiggins and Kuminga together. And look, I don't want to belabor that tonight because they both played well, but they both predominantly played well separately in the game tonight. They weren't on the floor a lot together. It wasn't a disaster in the short stints that they were on the floor together. You proved that you could finish a final 3 minutes with them on the floor together. But I think a big part of it, more than playmaking, is shooting. You got to have shooting on the floor in addition to those two. And the Warriors had 3 shooters on the floor. And I think it's come to a point where you saw a lot of Saric on the floor with Kuminga in this game tonight. And I think that helps Kuminga have a little bit more space and room to operate a little bit more consistently and a little bit in the flow. So a really good Steve Kerr game tonight. I thought he hit the right notes in the right moments to help guide the Warriors to victory. And again, I know a lot of Warrior fans are not going to like this, but I give Steve Kerr credit for kind of going in on the veterans as the foundation for what the Warriors are going to be if the Warriors are going to save this season. If they're not going to save the season, we're going to know here in the next couple of weeks, and drastic changes are going to be coming, and maybe that leads to a youth movement. But here's the thing. Just because you're leaning on the vets at the beginning of the game does not mean that the young players are not going to play or can't play and can't be productive. I like the balance of the way the Warriors attacked it and the way Steve Kerr attacked it in the game tonight. All right, it's Dubs OT with JD here on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader. Let's get to the phones. Let's get it rolling with Drew Down in Tracy on Dubs OT. What's going on, Drew Down? How you doing tonight, my man?
Hey, what's up, JD? It's much better calling you after a win than a loss, and I'm picking up everything you're putting down. I didn't have any problem with the starting lineup. I thought Saric, like you said, gave the Dubs another shooter on the floor. He was cooking. I thought he was a little bit too unselfish at some points. There were some times where he was wide open, and he was passing up the 3, and I was kind of yelling, but, it worked out. But the energy to start the game was awesome. They were limiting the turnovers. Saric and Wiggins in the first quarter definitely carry, as you said, Clay and Steph were struggling a little bit. JK, he's sometimes a work in progress on defense, but he was definitely cooking off the bench. Those 3-pointers were huge. And then the DubCon 3 was back, for at least one game. So that was nice to see the Warriors respond after that disastrous second quarter,
Yeah, a DubCon 3 after DEFCON 2, right? I mean, my goodness. That was
yeah, exactly.
Yikes.
Rising from the dead, right?
No doubt.
And then I definitely like the Clay and TJD connection. I felt like, Clay had a good feel for him as a defense, gravitates to him. He was dropping off to TJD, and he's a much better finisher in the paint than Looney is. So I like that connection. And then Clay and Steph just hit big shots in the fourth quarter. The game was almost slipping away from us, and they kind of brought it home for us. And then, like you said, I didn't really have a problem pulling JK for Wiggs there in the fourth. I thought JK was maybe getting a little tired. He missed a couple bunnies and maybe playing a little fast. So I definitely I didn't have a problem with that at all. The only problems I saw was I thought that non-challenge on the Trace Jackson Davis goaltending was ridiculous. He didn't end up using a challenge. I don't know how you don't. I don't know how you don't challenge that play, JD. I mean, it ended up being non-consequential, but if they were to lose that game, I best believe I would have came on this radio and pointed to that situation where it went from, I think, a 13 to 11 or 11 to 9, something like that, and that could have been a huge turning point in the game. So that was my only complaint against Kerr tonight, really. Other than that, my only other complaint is Bob Fitzgerald. That guy's been terrible, man. He was missing so many calls. It was out of bounds on them, and it wasn't. He's losing his touch. Other than that, great game. Got the win.
All right, thanks, Drew Down. Appreciate it, man. 808 KNBR, Drew Down's number, or the line is open for you at 808 KNBR. It's Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader. Yeah, the challenge would be the one thing, but I think Drew Down answered his own question there as to, well, why not challenge it? Well, I think Steve Kerr didn't challenge it in part because of where they were in the game, where it was still around a double-digit margin, and I think they felt they still had control of the game. And then the other thing is, I think Steve Kerr's reluctant to challenge at times because he's just had such a bad track record of challenges. The Warriors have among the worst challenge percentages in recent years, and I just think that he wants to be ultra sure, and I think he thought, hey, this thing might get closer later. I might need to keep that thing in the back pocket. I'd hate to lose it in that particular moment, but there's no doubt if the Bulls do end up coming back. And on the one hand, you love the fact that the Warriors' energy was so good for them to get the lead. You're like, what the hell's going on with the second quarter? They make up for it in the third. And then in the fourth, you're thinking, all right, is this team going to coast? Well, I think for them, they coasted to this point. I think this was probably as close to coasting as the Warriors can come up with. But I think when you look at it, it's a scenario where the Warriors really needed to make a lot of shots, which I think made people a little bit uncomfortable. That it's like, gosh, you got to make all those shots to be able to still cruise down to victory. All right, we'll pause here. We'll come back. We do have Sounds of Silver. We'll go inside the Warriors locker room. We'll get into the YouTube chat coming up as well, as the Warriors get a big one to start the 4-game road trip, 140-131. They win at Chicago. It's Dubs OT with JD here on KMBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Yeah. KNBR and KNBR FM, your home of San Francisco 49ers football. Hoops Heads, Dubs OT with John Dickinson keeps ballin'. Streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
To speak of, Kuminga rimmed it home from three.
And again, the dive, the roll is what sucked the defense in, gave Kuminga all kinds of space. What a game for Kuminga.
Patrick Williams driving. Playing, got him with an Iguodala, perfectly timed. Cycling around to Klay Thompson, a little show and go to Trace Jackson Davis. What a play by Klay.
Yeah, Warriors win tonight, 140 to 131. It's Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader, 808 KNBR. Appreciate everybody on the YouTube chat as well. We'll get into the YouTube chat coming up here momentarily. Big night for Jonathan Kuminga, 24 points for JK, and he did it by knocking down the three ball in this game. Kuminga goes for the 24, 4 of 4 from three after he had been 3 for his last 21, making an impact on the game. And I think an extra hat tip to Jonathan Kuminga because Steve Kerr took him out of the starting lineup and put him back on the bench. And I don't think it really had anything to do with the fact that Kuminga had played poorly or anything like that. I think he just wanted to try and instill confidence in his veterans and give Andrew Wiggins what amounts to maybe one last chance here before there's some kind of trade to be made to get his game back on track. I know Kerr had mentioned the fact that he thought Wiggins had played better over the last 15 games or so as a whole, not great in the last 3 or 4, then maybe it had been discussed. And it's crazy because I think, the last couple of days, it seems like the consensus is the Warriors are just going to trade Wiggins, and they want off of Wiggins, and I think there's a financial component to maybe getting off of Wiggins that could be in play as well, especially if the Warriors ultimately determine that they're not going to be good enough to be a team that wants to contend for the playoffs or try to get in and then try and make a run. If they determine in the next month that they're just out of it and that they're not going to be a playoff team or anything like that, then I think you could see the Warriors, in essence, try to get their financial house in order. But for Kuminga to come out and play as well as he did tonight, given the fact that he was taken out of the starting lineup, it just goes to show, and I think the message is clear. It's, hey, if you're not starting, that doesn't mean you can't be finishing, and it doesn't mean you can't come in and put a real big-time impact on the basketball game. And it allowed Wiggins, I think, to have the opportunity to flourish more. And J.K. still flourished at the level that he's been closer to over the course of the last month. Not always like that tonight, and tonight certainly one of his better games offensively of the season to date with the 24 points. But the Warriors are just – I think this Warriors team was built on the veterans being the stabilizing force and the veterans being the baseline for success. And so for Steve Kerr to ride it out with Wiggins one more time, and I do think this is the final time, put Saric in there. Doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be the lineup tomorrow. In fact, it might not be the lineup tomorrow when you look at going up against a Milwaukee Bucks team that's as talented as they are in the second of a back-to-back. But to ride it out with the veterans, to have the stabilizing force of Looney, as I mentioned, to have Steph and Klay out there basically back at their traditional positions. You got Klay playing the 2. You've got Wiggins playing the 3. And I give Wiggins credit for the energy and effort that he brought to the table, and Kuminga credit for not pouting, not getting upset. And if he was upset, he took it out on the basketball court and played at an extremely high level. And I just think that when the veterans are the baseline and the Warriors look to get the younger players in as role players around the veterans, I think that's the best possible combination for this team to have the best possible chance of success moving forward here and trying to get on a run over these next couple of weeks before they ultimately decide whether or not they need to kind of move on and go in a completely different direction. I don't think tonight means that anything's off the table. it was a nice win against a mediocre Chicago team that's been playing better than mediocre lately. But let's be honest, the Warriors to this point this season have been a mediocre basketball team themselves. And so their ability to get any kind of win, especially on the road, especially after you give up a quarter like that, at 45-29 in the second, and to bounce back with the 48-30, or 48-20 rather, in the third quarter, I think that's big. 808 KNBR, the number. 808 KNBR is the number. And Greg, I apologize. I saw Greg put out on social media, and you can jump on the mic if you want here, Greg. He put out on social media was this one of Andrew Wiggins' final games? Where I don't want to make that the question. That's not the question of the night. I don't like that. I'm making an executive decision. I don't want that to be the question of the night. The question of the night is, do you like Steve Kerr sticking with the veterans one more time? And I thought it was interesting. Wiggins has played a lot of 4. He predominantly played the 3 tonight, and they put shooting at the 4 out there with him, and they used some different combinations on the floor with Andrew Wiggins, and I think, I don't know whether that unlocked him. I don't know whether it was the fact that the trade deadline is getting to him and he wants to stick around, or maybe he's trying to get his value up to move on somewhere else. I think he probably would rather stick around than move elsewhere. But he played with a much different effort and energy and intensity level than he had in recent. It was noticeably different, not only for him, but for the Warriors. I felt like as a whole, and they ultimately reaped the benefits of all of that. 808 KNBR, the number. Let's get into the YouTube chat here on the Sports Leader. Hello there. Curry must be feeling old right now. Yeah, he has had so much of the weight on his shoulders that I think he's going to still go through struggles. He's still going to go through ups and downs, and he's carried this team to a lot of wins, and there are just going to be more ups and downs as he gets on in years, and he brought him home tonight. Rough start. It's been a little bit more of a rough stretch, I think, as there's been more time without Draymond. But Curry ended up carrying him to the finish line in this game tonight. Drew Down, what do the JK haters have to say tonight? This isn't a night-to-night thing. Like, I don't like doing. That's one thing that I can't stand is the when a fan base gets divided, and the fan base really has become divided over the last few weeks. It's get rid of Wiggins. It's JK this. You've got another section that, all right, these young guys aren't quite good enough. And like, play these guys. Don't play those guys. Like, this is still a team. This is still a team. And, they need everybody. And I think that's kind of the overarching theme for me from this game is they still need everybody. But the combinations and all of the back and forth and all of the ins and outs and all of the veterans are going to start this game and then they're not. And then if somebody plays well, they get there just have been too much change of late. And that's not to say it's not going to change tomorrow or Monday or Wednesday or anything like that, but there has just been so much change in the lineup, in the rotation, whatever. It felt tonight like there was some order to the Golden State Warriors rotation. It felt tonight like there was, and maybe it's just the fact that when the veteran guys play well, it just seems to make a little bit more sense than when they don't. But I just feel like, and I tweeted this, the Warriors puzzle makes more sense when Curry, Clay, Wiggins, and I think Looney can be on the floor. Because you've got the future Hall of Famers and the Champions Core guys. Wiggins, when they've been at their best these last couple of years, has been a part of that crew. And Looney, and eventually even Draymond, and have that be the baseline for how this team needs to operate. And then you bring Kuminga in at the 4. And then you get Podziemski on the court. And then you go to Trace Jackson Davis. And then you find the right spots for Saric. more of him playing the 4 in this game tonight than playing the 5, although he did play the 5 at the end with Kuminga and Wiggins out there together because you need the extra shooting if those two are going to be on the floor together in meaningful times. So I think it really is like you need everybody, regardless of the battle over who's starting and who's finishing and all of that kind of stuff. Like, you need everybody. And I think we'll see. Maybe Steve Kerr changes it up. Maybe he doesn't. But I think there does need to be some sense of stability, and I do think there needs to be some semblance of, all right, this is going to be the final ride with the veterans before major changes come. And this team is on the brink of major changes. This team is going to be on the brink of major changes if things don't get better and this team doesn't have a much better trip and or next couple of weeks, then things are going to be in a very different place. 808 KMBR. 808 KMBR is the number. Buco Sports, as soon as you tell your employees no one is safe on the staff, they start producing. Works like a charm. I think there's a little bit of that going on. No doubt. I think there's a little bit of everybody kind of feeling that if the energy doesn't change, then players that have been around are maybe going to not be around. Hello there. JD sounds calm tonight. I think I'm pretty fired up tonight. But it is a different energy when you win versus a loss. Because I knew people weren't going to be coming at me tonight. Great win. Caradvo, I hope this carries over to tomorrow. We'll see. I mean, tomorrow's a whole different animal against Milwaukee. Whole different animal. KM Johnson, I was holding my breath down the stretch. I think everybody was holding their breath down the stretch. Thought the Dubs could have done a much better job closing out. Too many easy shots, helping the Bulls keep it close. Yeah, the Bulls did get a lot of wide open looks tonight. A lot of wide open looks. And how about this? Regulator notes it, and I've got it on my sheet here. 5 turnovers for the Warriors tonight. 5 turnovers, tying a franchise record for the fewest in a game for the 5th time since turnovers were first tracked going back to 1970 and 1971. 5 turnovers. Not a lot of ball pressure from Chicago, but as we've seen, the Warriors don't need a lot of ball pressure on them at times to turn the basketball over. A lot of unforced turnovers when the Warriors are at their worst, and there wasn't the unforced turnovers. If they had the unforced turnovers with the heater the Bulls were on toward the end of the second quarter, this game would have gotten out of hand, and we'd be having a completely different conversation. Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson both with 6 or more threes tonight. That's the other thing. Like, I can talk about lineup changes and Wiggins coming alive and Jonathan Kuminga having a really nice game and really positive contributions up and down. It all starts with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. You look up at the end of the night, and Curry's got 27, and Klay's got 30. And Curry carried them down the stretch in the fourth quarter, and Klay basically carried them back from the dead in the third quarter. And so, you're always going to be as good as your best players. And so much of what the Warriors believed they could be this season was based on Curry and Klay and Wiggins and this group that they thought was, put together that was going to better allow the younger players to be able to fill in and put a better imprint on the game. Much needed win, rebelled the sounds. Kuminga was efficient. Yeah, Kuminga was efficient. He also made threes. I mean, and Kuminga's had efficient games. Kuminga has rarely had efficient games where he also makes threes. So I think that may be a little bit of an outlier. Like, he was hot tonight. And, maybe that's a little bit of regression to the mean. I think he was, 3 of his last 21. So now he's still 7 of his last 25 when you add the 4 for 4. But 7 to 25 is he's more of a 7 for 25 3-point shooter than he is a 3 for 21 3-point shooter. So, yeah, he was efficient. and they needed him to be efficient. Wiggins did play a real quality game against on both ends. He was two-way Wiggs tonight. It was two-way Wiggs tonight. Energy, rebounding, moving the basketball. Like, Wiggins had 8 assists tonight. So he looked to draw and kick it. How about Wiggins at one point putting his head down, getting into the paint, stopping and hitting Kuminga for a 3 in the brief stretch that they were on the floor together. And that was like oh wow, like mark that down. Real positive stuff there. So yeah, good stuff there from the Warriors, and good stuff there from Jonathan Kuminga and Andrew Wiggins. And again, it's a matter of consistency. Does it wind up adding up to much more here moving forward? That's the question. Like, can it lead to, does this lead to a 3-1 trip? Do we look back a month from now and go, wow, that night in Chicago, that was when the Warriors got on a heater and put themselves, got back into it, and they ended up not making a trade, or they ended up making a different trade, or whatever the heck it is. And it was the night that the whole season turned. We'll see. I mean, I think we all do that every night they get a win. It is just one win. But it's a matter of how much of tonight actually translates, and with the opponent that they're playing tomorrow in Milwaukee, tomorrow they could play very well tomorrow on the second of a back-to-back going up against the Bucks and still get smoked. And then we're doing the show at this time tomorrow, and it's kind of back to the drawing board. But tonight was a win in my mind they absolutely had to get, and I put the onus on them. I think they got to go 3-1 on this trip. Tomorrow's the one that I give them to play with, because the Bucks are just at a different level than the Warriors, especially playing that game on the road. But you got to start somewhere. And I liked the order that Steve Kerr had with his rotations and everything else. But again, it doesn't matter if Wiggins doesn't come out and play better, and Kuminga doesn't come out and be efficient, and Steph and Klay don't come out and score 57 combined and knock down 13 three-pointers each. So it's all contingent on all of that happening and continuing to happen. Otherwise, we're going to be having the same conversations about rough rotations and play this guy and don't play that guy. Let's see. 808 KNBR is the number. 808 KNBR. It's Dubs OT with JD here on The Sports Leader. Appreciate everybody on YouTube and Twitch. We've also got an edition to Just Dubs coming up tomorrow from 10 a.m. until 12 right here on The Sports Leader.
JD on a Saturday just feels right.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And we'll be with you tomorrow, 10 until noon, and then the Warriors and the Bucks. We're going to be with you immediately at the final horn of that one as the Warriors try to make it 2 in a row before going to Memphis, and then on to Utah, and then back home a week from tonight when the Warriors are going to tip off another 5-game homestand. All right, let's go ahead and pause here. We'll come back. We'll get into Sounds of Silver, more from the YouTube chat. We've got a couple of phone lines open. 808 KNBR is the number. As the Warriors get a big one, our question of the night tonight for Dubs OT. Do you like Steve Kerr and his decision to stick with the veterans as a foundation for success for this Warriors team? It doesn't mean the rookies and the young guys aren't going to play. They all did, and for the most part, they contributed in a positive fashion to this game tonight. But I like what Kerr did. A vote of confidence in Wiggins, no sulking from Kuminga. Steph and Klay do their thing, and Trace Jackson-Davis and Podziemski both put positive imprints on the game. It all adds up to a big win. We'll continue the conversation next. It's KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.
Rasheed Wallace.
Did you hear something?
Yeah, like a swoosh.
Yeah.
Dubs OT presents the sounds of silver. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Clay terminated the dribble. Steph springs free. Off back iron. Looney fight for the rebound. New opportunity. Clay on a reload. And Wiggins. Third opportunity for the Dubs. Steph. Little floater. And Looney. How about that? 4 times and they finally get the bucket.
You got to get something out of it. You're working that hard. These are 2 really good offensive rebounding teams, but the Warriors are the better defensive rebounding team. Sometimes the Bulls can struggle on that side. If you're the Warriors, you got to take advantage of it.
Yeah, the Warriors did take advantage of it tonight. 13 offensive rebounds, 21 second chance points, and the Warriors beat the Bulls tonight 140 to 131. We welcome you back here. It's Dubs OT with JD here on KNBR 1045 and 680, the sports leader. So the Warriors now 18-20 on the season. Big games from Klay Thompson. Stephen Curry closed strong. Klay did a lot of his damage in quarter number 3. Steph, most of his in the 4th. Jonathan Kuminga with 24 and an efficient 24 while also hitting the 3-ball tonight as he went back to the bench but was highly effective. Andrew Wiggins back in the starting lineup, and he was highly effective. So the Warriors really got tremendous contributions from those 4 in this game tonight. Steph and Klay along with Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga. That's how you get to 140. Warriors also hit 20 3-pointers in this game. They wound up out shooting the Bulls, although the Bulls got red hot in quarter number 2. Bulls ended up 18 of 40, 45% from 3, but the Warriors able to outmake Chicago 20 to 18 from 3-point range. The bench did the job, 45-22 in favor of the Warriors. Dubs in Milwaukee tomorrow. All right, let's bring in Greg Silver, Sounds of Silver, here on the Sports Leader. What do you got tonight, Greg?
Well, JD, I'm glad you talked about that ridiculous second quarter. That's actually where I wanted to start because I'm looking at the box score right in front of me, and the shooting numbers were ridiculous with DeMar DeRozan, 5 of 6. Nikola Vucevic, 2 of 2. Zach LaVine, 3 of 4. Kobe White, 4 of 5. That's just the starters accounting for, 35 points of the 45. I mean, that was pretty ridiculous. So Steve Kerr talked about switching up the defense a little bit going into that third quarter and doing a little zone experimentation. That third quarter, of course, was a tale of two. I don't know. I can't even speak right now, but you get what I mean. It was the opposite. It was a vintage third quarter Warriors, and we're going to hear from Steve Kerr talking about some of those defensive switches in the postgame.
We mixed it up. We played a few different zones and just tried to take them out of their offensive rhythm. They scored 75 points in the first half, so we had to try something and, a little box and one, a little, 3-2. Just try to, that's kind of what you have to do in the NBA these days. It's so hard to guard. Everybody shoots threes, the slightest bit of contact, and it's 2 free throws. And so it's almost like college now in some ways where you try to mix and match defenses and keep teams off balance a little bit because it's virtually impossible to defend at a high level. It's just the way the game is set up.
Yeah, and the Warriors did mix it up a little bit. It's funny. They're just these avalanches, Greg, of offense that come, and it really happened both ways. The Warriors had their hot stretch, but it seems like every game there's just an avalanche coming. Now, some of that is poor defense. The Warriors have not been a great defensive team in the absence of Draymond Green, but they mixed it up, and the Bulls are not the team that you think is going to get 131 on you, although they are playing much better offensively in the last 20 than they were over the first 15 or 16 games of the season. But, yeah, that you got to mix it up. And a lot of it, too, I think is, just even though the defense was up and down for the Warriors, they played harder tonight. They played more forcefully in the game tonight, which I think sets a better tone. It allows you to come back even when things aren't going your way, and there were times where things definitely were not in this game, late second quarter and lead up to halftime.
No, there's no doubt about it. I mean, that was kind of why in the first quarter I wasn't feeling so dire like I was in some of the recent games on that homestand. Now, there's always that thought in the back of your head of like, okay, the Warriors can't let this one get away because once they've dug themselves into a hole, they've really struggled to get out of it. But they turned it around pretty quickly, and I got to give them credit with how they responded to that extra long halftime. Shout out to the Ring of Honor and Steve Kerr and all that 96 legendary 72 Bulls
Without
team.
Jordan and Pippen, where was Dennis Rodman?
It was the role players showing up. 20 years from now, you're going to see Ian Clark and Brandon Rush and Jordan Bell while Steph, Clay, and Dre are all at home or something like that. But yeah, that was the credit to the Warriors for how they turned around after that halftime. And this next cut I have, JD, is everybody's favorite topic, isn't it? And this is Steve Kerr, again, talking about why the Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga combination actually worked and why he went for it. It wasn't a ton of minutes, but he did do it, and we've heard him talk about how he's less inclined to play that group. Let's hear what he has to say about why he was inclined to stick with it on a night when they needed everybody.
I think putting them with Dario helped spread the floor, and I thought both J.K. and Wiggs were just playing such great games that you got to throw them out there. They're two of our best players tonight. I thought J.K. it was maybe the best game he's played, not just because he made 4 threes, but his spirit, his energy. He seemed right. He seemed comfortable. The whole group, the whole team was just committed to let's go out and win, and very proud of them. They've taken a lot of heat. We've all taken a lot of heat, this past week, deservedly so. But this is what you do as a pro. A lot of these guys are champions. You got to respond, and they did tonight.
Big time response. I don't know about I'll trust Steve Kerr on the whole energy and spirit with Jonathan Kuminga being right. I do give him credit, and I know there was a back and forth, as there always is in the YouTube chat, about Kuminga and me calling it like I see it, both on the plus and at times the downside. But I give him credit tonight for playing the way that he did when he probably wasn't happy that he wound up back on the bench. Like that is something that if you followed what's been going on here over the last month, for him to do that and really help this team win and maybe play his best game of the season or of his career, that shows a level of maturity that is starting to grow in Jonathan Kuminga, and having it be about the team and what can help the team best. As far as the combinations and all that, Greg, I think I kind of nailed that one, right? It was about Saric and spacing, but it also was the fact that, hey, they were out there playing great when they weren't together. I can't not keep one of them on the floor when they're both playing well. The Warriors just don't have enough good players to keep somebody off the floor in the instance that they're playing well. And if they do, they're going to start winning a lot of games. Like if they have 6-7 guys playing well on a given night, then they're going to be winning a lot of games.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. And it just goes to show that you guys should listen to JD sometimes. He kind of knows his stuff. He's pretty good at this. And that leads me to my next cut, which is Jonathan Kuminga himself. I agree that we should be praising him big time tonight, of course, for his play and his willingness to come off the bench. But you can even tell a little bit in this post-game cut. He seems so calm and poised and very team-centric. And I think that fairly so, as we'll go with any sport. After these last 2 games, there were a lot of questions about, has Steve Kerr lost the locker room, especially these younger players that haven't won a handful of championships with him and maybe felt like they weren't been given a fair chance. I think tonight was a good demonstration, and it did start with that veteran group, Saric and the original starters, that they cared, and they were still playing hard for Steve Kerr and each other, and they weren't just throwing in the towel because, yeah, the Chicago Bulls aren't a great team, but the way the Warriors played the last 2 games of their homestand, they could have lost to any team in the NBA, and they really rallied together as a group tonight, and I want to give Jonathan Kuminga some serious props for the attitude shift that we saw tonight. JD, we first talked about how we were frustrated with the Christmas game, how that was a little bit weird timing to speak out when things were going so well for him and he was playing his role really well. Tonight, He was 4 of 4 from 3 off the bench, played much better defense, and just had a really good rhythm all around. Wasn't turning the ball over, as was the case for the whole team. And here's Kuminga talking about the losing weighing on the team and himself, and then just trying to put together some consistent performances.
When you lose, you talk about everything to a point where you don't even know what to say anymore. And the only last thing y'all got to do is just go out there and battle and win. So obviously we haven't been winning like we usually do, and that gets old. And it gets to a point where everybody just say, whatever it is, just let's go out there and play. Just enjoy and just stacking up games after games and winning.
Yeah, I mean, that's the attitude to have. I mean, it's go out there, think team, be high energy, high intensity. And look, I think for the most part, Kuminga has done that, to be perfectly honest. I know there was the sit-down that he did with Kendra Andrews of ESPN going way back, like more than a month or so ago, where he really spoke to the fact that he's tried to get out of that mindset. And, yeah, when you don't play and you want to help, and there have been some things, I think, from his camp that have come out that haven't necessarily helped matters, but he's also played better. And so, I don't know. I think tonight is a real formula for success. Does it mean they're going to go into Milwaukee and win tomorrow? I mean, I probably wouldn't pick them at this point to go into Milwaukee and win tomorrow. But I think if they get contributions from the players that they got contributions from tonight, and you add Draymond back in the mix, then maybe this team can get on a little bit of a run between now and the trade deadline, and maybe that eases some of the pressure to make the dramatic move that so many have been hell-bent that this Warriors team needs to make. 808 KNBR is the number. Good stuff, Greg. Sounds of Silver here on the Sports Leader as the Warriors get the win 140-131 over the Bulls. Big third quarter for Golden State, and the Warriors on to Milwaukee, I guess busting through a snowstorm tonight from Chicago to Milwaukee before ending up this road trip in Memphis and Utah. We'll get a look at the standings coming up here as well, and some of the other scores around the NBA on this Friday night with a lot of games going back and forth. I got Denver and New Orleans on here. Mid-third quarter, Denver all over New Orleans. Pelicans have been playing well. Nuggets trying to continue on their home floor. They're up 18 middle of the third quarter on the Pelicans. That game, the ESPN Friday night nationally televised ball game. Couple of more in the YouTube chat, then we'll pause here briefly. We'll come back, fun with numbers. We'll get everybody set up and on into their Friday for Just Dubs tomorrow as we'll reconvene at 10 a.m. here on KNBR, the Sports Leader. Hello there, saying, I saw Wiggins smile. Greg, did you see Wiggins smile tonight?
Yeah, I saw Draymond hyping him up, too, during timeouts, coming to the bench. That was awesome.
Yeah, Wiggins. I must have been looking at a different screen at that point. But no, that's good. Hopefully, that is a sign that things can continue for Andrew Wiggins, because you're right. When things don't go well for Wiggins, it does. I mean, he just does seem really unhappy. He just seems like down and sad and dour, and it just you don't want that for anybody. You just don't want that to be the mood of the team. The mood of the team, at least for one night, did seem to be a lot better, even though there were ups and downs within the game for the Warriors. 808 KNBR, a couple of funny ones here from the land of Hella. Why do they have JD in the corner like that? With a laughing face. Yeah, the corner's getting built up. The corner office is getting built up. Not a lot to it. This one made me chuckle as well. Old buddy Douglas Mikes. JD looks like he's taking his passport photo. This thing's going to have a little more pizzazz to it as we move forward here on the Sports Leader with these Dubs OT shows. But still a little bit of a work in progress. This thing was going to get built up a little bit more last night and today, and then I got the nod that Greg Papa was going to have to miss a couple of shows, and so I was going to be subbing in for Johnny Lund, and that took away from my ability to kind of navigate the background here. But it will grow, and let me tell you, you will love it. And yeah, that's pretty funny. It does look like the passport photo background. And then the debate about Jonathan Kuminga, always such a debate. There was I don't even want to reference the person that called me a JK hater. I appreciate those of you in the YouTube chat that took up for me. If you followed me for years, if you followed me on this show and in my previous life, as I said, I call it like I see it. It's nothing personal. I will say there have been times, and I've made points of this, where it does seem like he can do no wrong in the media and fans' eyes, but no, he played exceptional offensively in the game tonight. But I appreciate those who took up for me in the YouTube chat. All in good fun. The good with the bad. As far as JK goes, Drew Down Kuminga still stands around on the perimeter on offense too much. I don't think that's a problem. I think it was more, and there was a back and forth about the decision making. The decision making for Kuminga has been a lot more quick on offense. I think the problem for him really in the last month, the only real negative is defensively, team defense has been really bad. A lot of the early going of the Toronto game was overhelping. Times in the Denver game, he was just overhelping and allowing easy buckets. He doesn't always make the right switch. There are times where you can see somebody's telling him to switch or not to switch, and he just kind of gets caught in between. I think if there has been a problem as to why maybe he hasn't quite been as trusted, even though his offense has been so good, it has been not on-ball defense necessarily or one-on-one defense. He does make the spectacular block here and there, but it's been more the team defense as well. HR, that's my person there saying that I'm hating. Kuminga didn't miss a shot tonight. He was the best player in Chicago. I mean, he was right up there. He did miss a couple of shots down the stretch. Got a little erratic in the fourth quarter. Kerr went away from him, was the right call, went back to Wiggins, and then finished with Wiggins and Kuminga together. I mean, Kerr got it right in this one. Regulator, I'd like to see Kuminga develop a mid-range. Yeah, mid-range and handle, really. And a more consistent three-point shot. But I think handle is probably the biggest problem, for the way that he currently plays. Now, if he's able to get a more consistent three ball, I think you could live with close to the level of handle that he has. But no doubt, talented player. Irwin Kwong, 22 points off the turnovers for the Warriors. That was a key. Definitely a key. No question about it. Drew Down making the point, and JK playing better on offense than team defense, team offense. Yeah, I think he's gotten much better, not much better team offense, and I think that's what's allowed him to flourish. He's just been quicker in his decision making. I'm going to take this shot. I'm going to drive all the way to the bucket. He had some pull-ups tonight. He was in his bag tonight. He was feeling it. And a bad matchup, obviously, for Chicago, and he was able to take advantage of it at a high level, and the Warriors absolutely needed it in this one tonight. All right, 808 KMBR is the number. We still got time to sneak in a couple of calls. Let's go ahead and take a quick one, Greg, and then we'll come back and we'll have fun with numbers, and we'll wrap things up as the Warriors get the win over the Bulls. We'll set you up for Just Dubs tomorrow, back here at 10 a.m. on the Sports Leader. And then we'll be on. We'll let everybody know what's going on tomorrow as far as the Dubs and the Bucks from Milwaukee and how you can catch us tomorrow following that one. All right, KMBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.
From Chef Curry to CP3, we're repping the Bays team. Dubs OT with John Dickinson now continues. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045. This is Dubs OT with JD. Time now for fun.
I'm a fun guy.
With numbers.
No, I'm just having fun.
On KNBR 1045 and 680. Streaming live on KNBR.com and the KNBR app.
And Curry, long and strong, batted back out. Wiggins hustle with the rebound. Andrew, step around, lay it in, tie the game.
That was a mean Euro step. Vucevic is still looking for him.
Chicago takes time. Canada is not in Europe, but Andrew Wiggins, a little maple two-step to tie it at 84.
Yeah, Andrew Wiggins, hell of a play there. Part of what ended up being a 25-9 run. It was 22-9 at that point. Timeout Chicago, 84 apiece as the Warriors came from 13 down at the half. They would end up ahead by 15 going to the fourth quarter. Big third quarter for the Dubs. That flips this game. 48-20 Golden State in the third. They win 140-131. It's Dubs OT with JD here on KNBR, the sports leader. Final couple of minutes here on KNBR before we head out into the night and let everybody know we'll be back tomorrow 10 a.m. until 12 right here on KNBR, the sports leader, with Just Dubs, our second episode of Just Dubs, the live show each and every Saturday morning here on the sports leader. The great Greg Silver, a part of that as well. And Greg, let's also let everybody know tomorrow what's going to be going on as far as your ability to catch us, because it's going to be a little bit different with some of the NFL coverage here on KNBR as far as how you can catch us immediately following the Dubs games in Milwaukee and in Memphis.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a lot of stuff going on right now on The Sports Leader. We've got NFL playoffs coming up this weekend, national NBA games, a bunch of them on MLK Day. And, of course, we got our Dubs shows. So tomorrow, Saturday, 10 a.m. to noon is going to be standard procedure, just as we did last week. You can find us on YouTube. That link will be up in the morning. You can find us right here on 104.5 FM and 680 AM. And, of course, Twitch and the all-new KNBR app. Then in the afternoon, on our airwaves, we're going to be having NFL playoffs because we got 2 games tomorrow. So what that means for the Dubs is that JD and I will go live on YouTube only, kind of how we did those first 2 Just Dubs in podcast form using either StreamYard or Restream. We'll get that link out to you sometime before it goes, but that's going to be immediately after the Grizzlies game, which is a 3 p.m. tip-off. Then, sorry, that's Monday is the Grizzlies game. Tomorrow is the Bucks game, which is a 5 p.m. tip-off, and we'll be going live YouTube only. So both for Friday and Monday, it's going to be just YouTube shows. You will not find us here on the radio, but you can find us online. And that's going to be the case of what we do when we have a lot of overflow with sports. And, of course, with the 49ers and the playoffs coming up, we hope that they play multiple playoff games. So that schedule is all up in the air, but we are making sure we have a plan in place for tomorrow and beyond. YouTube only for tomorrow in the afternoon. Just Dubs 10 to 12, standard procedure.
Yeah, and just join us on YouTube after the game tomorrow and after the game on Monday. And I know we're going to be working. There aren't going to be too many of those between now and the end of the season. Obviously, once we get into Giants baseball, there could be some, but there's some other things we're working on, including the ability to take calls on the YouTube show as well. So a lot of big things coming up here with Dubs OT, and even a special announcement for some of the shows after the home games we hope to get to next week as well when the Warriors get back on the home floor a week from tonight. All right, fun with numbers here. Also want to make sure we revisit our question of the night because you put it up as a poll question, and I want to make sure we get to the answer and just the percentages as far as the votes and where everybody was at. And I had it up on my screen, and then I lost it here. But, yeah, here, question of the night, do you support Steve Kerr's decision to stick with the veterans like he did tonight? And mainly that was stick with the veterans in the starting lineup specifically. Obviously, the young players played a lot and had an impact on the game. And the 2 choices were, yes, they are the engine. No, they are inconsistent. Looks like 62% of the vote saying yes, stick with them, they are the engine, and about 38% of the vote voting no. I'm actually a little bit surprised, but believe it or not. I thought that was going to be much more 50-50, probably still in line with the veterans, but closer to 50-50 than the 63 or 63-37, 62-38 split that we saw. That's a conversation that we'll definitely revisit, I think, tomorrow on Just Dubs here on KNBR, the Sports Leader. Fun with numbers real quick. 7-9 are the Warriors now away from home this season. The Warriors have played very well against Chicago, winning 12 of the last 13 against the Bulls overall, including 6 of the last 7 in Chicago. Warriors and Bulls at Chase Center in March the 7th, so just under 2 months away when those 2 teams will play for the second and final time. Highest scoring quarter of the season for the Warriors. Quarter number 3, 48-24 Dubs there, and the Warriors scored at least 140 for the second time this season. Remember that game back in OKC in November that the Warriors won. That was the other time they put up 140. So Golden State now 2-0 when they get to 140 on the season. 70 points in the first half the Warriors have allowed in 4 of the last 5 games, including each of the last 3. We talked about 76 against Toronto and 73 against the Pelicans. Tonight it was 75. That's something that's got to change. It's been one ugly quarter basically in every game that's been the reason for these halves. And the 46-point quarter going back the other night, the Warriors have got to cut out the bad quarters, but when you can offset them with great quarters, you can still win, especially against other mediocre teams, and that's what the Warriors were able to do tonight. 7th double-digit comeback of the season for the Warriors. Dubs trailed by as many as 13. And I think the number of the night is the Warriors tying the franchise record for the fewest amount of turnovers in a game. 5 turnovers. Turnovers have been kept since 1970-71. And they had 39 assists. 39 assists for the Warriors and it's just the third time since turnovers were first tracked that a team has had 39 or more assists while having 5 or fewer turnovers. The Timberwolves in 2003 were the last team to do it. So the Warriors did something that hadn't been done in the NBA in over 20 years. The Warriors did wind up making this a clutch game. 5 points with 5 or fewer minutes to go. Warriors 15-14 in the 29 clutch games that they've played. That's 29 clutch games out of 38 total games for the Warriors. Now 15-14, and the Warriors will take on the Bucks tomorrow. Some individual numbers for the Warriors. Klay Thompson, 17-point third quarter, hitting 5 of 5 from 3 in the third, finished 7 of 15 overall. Season high 6 assists, and Klay Thompson had 6 rebounds as well. So it wasn't just the shooting and the 3-ball for Klay. He played an exceptional game, and Klay Thompson is shooting about 45% from 3 over the last 5 games. Stephen Curry, 15 in the fourth. So it was Curry's fourth quarter, 15. Klay's third quarter, 17. Jonathan Kuminga tied his season high with 24, including the 8-for-8 start, 4 of 4 from 3. Fourth 20-point game for Kuminga on the season. Kuminga has now scored in double figures 18 straight games for Jonathan Kuminga as he got the job done tonight. And Andrew Wiggins, 17 points, 5 boards to go with a season-high 8 assists. So Kuminga was making things happen in a lot of different ways. Trace Jackson-Davis, 13 points. He scored double figures, 11 of the last 13. And Trace Jackson-Davis has the ability to score in double figures and do it really quietly and efficiently. But his buckets have been welcome for the Warriors, and obviously most of them are right at the rim, which helps the Warriors in a big-time way. Quick look at the NBA standings and some of the scores from tonight. We'll go through the Western Conference. Sacramento got thumped in Philadelphia. No Embiid for the Sixers, and Philly was all over the Kings, basically leading that game by around 20 for a good majority of the night. 112-93 the final there. Kings are 2-1, though, on their 5-game road trip as they will play Milwaukee Sunday. Warriors go to Milwaukee tomorrow, and Milwaukee has a home back-to-back where they take on the Warriors tomorrow and then the Kings on Sunday. Sacramento, though, again, they've picked up a couple of wins in Charlotte and in Detroit to begin that road trip. They go to Milwaukee and then finish in Phoenix before they come back home. But you look at the NBA standings, and Sacramento still in a very good place despite the loss, still 23-15, although that right now has them 6th in the Western Conference. 23-15 is the bar right now to avoid the play-in tournament. That level of play would have had you a 3rd seed a year ago, but right now it's a 6th seed. Warriors currently are 5 games back of Sacramento, who is currently the last team that would be guaranteed a playoff spot in the top 6. Other Western Conference games just to look at here briefly of note, the Clippers went into Memphis and won 128-119. So the Clippers now are 25-13. They've won 3 in a row and 8 of 10, and the Clippers currently standing in 4th in the Western Conference. Denver, they're all over the Pelicans right now, leading that one 105-86 in the 4th quarter. Denver right there with the Clippers. Oklahoma City and Minnesota continue to lead the pack. Minnesota blew out Portland. Boy, it's a nightly occurrence for Minnesota or for Portland. And Utah blew out Toronto. Wow, Utah is hot. Jazz blow out Toronto 145-113. And so the Jazz are 20-20. And currently hold the 10th spot in the Western Conference as far as the play-in tournament goes. Both the Lakers and the Warriors right now are on the outside looking in of the play-in tournament. Lakers at 19-20, Warriors at 18-20. All right, that'll do it. Greg, excellent work in the studio tonight. Really appreciate it. Was Raf tonight?
Raf Corral.
Raf Corral tonight as well. Appreciate his help. Join me and Greg tomorrow as we're going to be back 10 a.m. until noon right here on KNBR, the Sports Leader. Just Dubs, taking your phone calls live on YouTube and Twitch. And then join us on YouTube for Dubs OT tomorrow during the NFL playoffs as the Warriors take on the Milwaukee Bucks. We'll go as long as the people in the chat want to go tomorrow on Dubs OT here on the Sports Leader. Thanks to Raf, thanks to Greg, thanks to everyone who participated in the program via text, via the call, via the YouTube chat. We will talk to you tomorrow. Nice win for the Warriors as they get the job done in Chicago. 140 to 131. Just Dubs. 10 a.m. tomorrow. It's KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.
That's just like making a game winner.
Clock at 3. Curry, 3.
And Looney, how about that? 4 times, and they finally get the bucket.
Some days I think about like homework in school, but then, I got to look and I don't have it.
The number of the night is the Warriors tying the franchise record for the fewest amount of turnovers in a game. 5 turnovers, and they had 39 assists.
Can't wait.